Hello Leo, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for March for the Sun or the Ascendant. As ever, I'm going to give you the broad overview of what to expect, but then please stay with me. I will dive deep to give you in much greater detail all the key dates and influences that impact on your sign in particular. Now, as this month begins, your sign is governed by the Sun, and as this month begins, the Sun is alongside Jupiter, the planet of growth, optimism, and traditionally in astrology of luck. But it's the area of your particular situation which is truly fascinating, because it's the 8th house. The 8th house is great for business, for entrepreneurship, for things like property, investments, pensions, savings, but also it can be to do with legacies and inheritances. The 8th house in a more spiritual way can be about transformations, and the Sun in Pisces is going to forge a key link with the planet of transformation of Pluto, and that's going to go on through the 16th to the 20th of this month. And that could be a time when you can get the precision of your situation and the management of the details to work with you in a way that can see your situation evolve in a way which is really helpful to you. But that conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter and the new moon of the 2nd sees you storm into this new month with a real potential to improve your lot. Now, of course, we do have the spring equinox in March, and this year it's on the 20th. And this sees the Sun return to the start of its western tropical astrological journey, and at 0 degrees Aries, the vernal point. But this is particularly critical for you because this is a fire sign and it's in the fire triplicity like you. And it's also about your 9th house. So the last 10 days of this month, I think, are going to give you an opportunity to widen your horizons and be a little bit more buccaneer and adventurous. But please stay with me for the further details. If you're new to my channel, I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Also, if you'd like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, you can do so by subscribing on the link below. I've written these for years, so it would be lovely to have you with me. And finally, if you want to ascend above this Zodiac broadcast and understand your natal astrology for the next year, you can take advantage of my special package of a forecast and a character analysis based on your time, date and place of birth, which will take you into the early parts of 2023. No two charts are the same and can give you searing insights into how your personal situation is evolving. Hello Leo, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for March. So the Sun's alliance with Jupiter across the first 9 days is an opportunity for growth, but that growth can happen in so many different ways. Ironically, you still have a lot of planets active in the part of your scope to do with practicalities. So it may be, for example, that this month is going to see you finally grappling with the organisation of your situation in a way which gives you the kind of tangible returns that are important. Now, that can be financial, but it can be in terms of just feeling valuable. It can be feeling that our contacts with others are based on mutual respect. So I want you to think about the concept of the 8th house in terms of investment, but not only in terms of money and business. If the investment can be where we want to put the most of ourselves into a situation and be very devoted to it. Now, that could be a business, but it could be our children, it could be a hobby, it could be a business idea we have that hasn't quite formed beyond the embryonic stage, but something can transform this month in a powerful way. Transformation often sees one way of doing things make way for a fresh way of doing things. But then again, it could be that something that's been ongoing and evolving suddenly reaches a point of real quality and becomes much more tangible. So those are the strands that are possible at the start of this month. But generally, the Sun's combination with Jupiter can give you a sense of uplift. It is important not to overpromise and then end up under-delivering. And Jupiter conjunct the Sun can tempt us to do that, but much less so in the 8th house. The 8th house is a very serious house. It's got a very scorpionic influence. And I think because of the 6th house energies stacked up of Venus and Mars together, very closely aligned to Pluto by the 3rd, in the case of Mars exact, and also Mercury in the sign of Aquarius combining with Saturn as this month begins, is going to provide some real counterpoints to being too flamboyant in a way which wouldn't necessarily be helpful. So what do we do when we sort of clear the mist from all this energy? I think what we're finding is that whatever strand you want to put all of your efforts into, all of your inspiration, can be very richly rewarding. But I think your investment into these situations needs to be very committed. It needs to be very deep. So superficial interests are much less likely to give you so much of a reward. Now the 8th house can be about sex, and of course Venus and Mars and Pluto coming together on the 3rd is about as hot as it could get, but they're in the 6th house, which is much more about clean sheets and nice sensual massages rather than full-on steamy frolics. But the Sun's combination with Jupiter in the 8th house could see you align with someone who you feel can be good for you, and you can have a mutually uplifting benefit to one another, but it could just as much be a business partner as it could be a romantic one. Now on the 6th, your romantic situation is given a great help, because then Venus and Mars continue their long conjunction together, which began around about the 6th of February, now moves into the sign of Aquarius. This, within 3 degrees, this combination is going to go on through to the start of April. So it really is a very rare, long-standing alliance. Venus, of course, is about the charm, and it's about being coquettish, and Mars is about the raw desire, instant gratification. The 7th house they move into on the 6th, and of course join up with Mercury briefly, because Mercury is set to move on the 10th. This is more about how we really connect to people, but we find the midpoint between our interests and needs and theirs. So listening is as important as telling. But there could be something very delightful that ferments for you on the back of that change. But Mercury then moves on the 10th into the sign of Pisces. I can only be honest, it's not its best transit. It's in detriment in the sign of Pisces. The great news is that Mercury is going to be moving into the sign of Aries, your sister fire sign, on the 27th. And that's going to be very much more electrifying and energizing for you. But your thinking in the 8th house has to deal with the wateriness of Pisces. So if you are thinking about anything to do with investments and pensions and savings and property and mortgages, all those kind of things, make sure that your thinking is crystal clear. That's vitally important, especially when Mercury drifts past Neptune later in the month. But we do have that wonderful alliance between the Sun and Pluto between the 16th and the 20th. And if you're wanting to really extract the full benefits of all your assets this month, whether it's talents, enthusiasm, hard work, money, even the physical things that you own, I think this can be a month where you really get your act together really well. But the 18th does see a full moon, and if something is out of kilter in your finances, you're going to have to address it over the following 2 weeks. Perhaps, for example, everyday expenditure is too high, which could impact on the security of your longer term situation. Maybe you're planning too much for that rainy day and starving yourself of pleasures in the here and now. Jupiter actually impacts on this full moon as much as it does on the new moon. So Jupiter very influential this month. But on the 19th, Venus in the sign of Aquarius, which generally is very, very fortunate for relationships, that gets into an abrasive right angle with Uranus. But Uranus is in your sector of worldly interaction, but also of control. If there is a relationship which seems, a bit stuck because one of the partners or one of the people involved always wants it on their terms, it really could start to become quite a theme through from the 18th to the 27th, when Mars gets caught up in squaring Uranus. Now these two are much more caustic than Venus, and maybe there is something that does need to be discussed that's out of kilter around a relationship, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a personal one. But expect quite a lot of tension to permeate itself at that time if some of your relationships are not running quite as tickety-boo. But the spring equinox on the 20th and the start of the Western tropical calendar, which is predicated on the 4 cardinal quadrants of the seasons and not on the constellations per se, they were more symbolic, well, that is brilliant for you, because that's the point where you really can emerge from the deep and very, very deep 8th house into the much more outgoing, adventurous, buccaneering 9th house. And when Mercury joins up on the 27th, I think your appetite to engage with the world in a much wider way is really going to be recharged, rebooted in a way which is just absolutely awesome. So expect to change some things, to travel, to be much more spontaneous and motivated in the physical context later in this month. But I can't stress enough what a critical month this is for making the most of where you're most invested, and where you've been most invested in the past. If that isn't working for you anymore, there does need to be some kind of new beginning developing. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Leo. Thank you so much for joining me. Stay safe, take care, and goodbye.